to the verse-by-verse study of the book of Proverbs. We begin chapter 18 today. Recall that Proverbs are God's instructions for daily living. Each day you and I have a choice between what Proverbs calls making a wise decision, a godly decision, or making a foolish decision. Scripture calls these foolish decisions because they lead to personal harm. The first verse will reflect an example of self-destruction, foolish decisioning. It is choosing the attitude and actions of a rebellious teenager. An unfriendly or stubborn person pursues selfish ends and against all sound judgment starts quarrels. This is unfortunately an example of a person that's chosen an attitude and actions of anger, being hard-headed, volatile, argumentative, quarrelsome. They purposely and harshly reject wise, caring counsel. This person only thinks of themselves. They are self-absorbed. They foolishly have no concern for the hurt and consequences that they're causing themselves and others. This word in the Hebrew for quarrelsome is very descriptive. It means an animal snarling and baring their teeth. So what is this person's motivation? They pridefully want to feel like they're in control, that they're in charge. They do not see that foolishly they're out of control. Why? Because they lack wisdom and self-discipline. They lack discernment, and they lack gratitude. The next verse will also give us an example of one of the characteristics of a fool. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, meaning listening and learning, but delight in airing, speaking their own opinions. The biblically defined fool is typically someone that's arrogant, which means they're unteachable because their mouth is mostly open and their ears and their heart are mostly closed. They'd rather listen to their own voice rather than to listen to sound advice. This is an example and an important difference between the prideful and the humble. The wise are humble, the fools are prideful. The author next will describe the consequences of making these decisions throughout life that are, quote, foolish. Let's take a look. When wickedness comes, so does contempt, and with shame comes reproach. The prideful, the fool, by definition, will consistently make selfish decisions, self-centered decisions that are often uncaring, disloyal, even deceitful. And eventually this leads to wickedness because they have no sense of right nor wrong. Proverbs is clear that pride always leads to a fall. And it is so sad that a life of prideful selfishness leads a legacy of hurt relationships and a reputation that is what's called contemptible to all those that have been harmed by that fool's decisions throughout their life. Next, the words of the mouth are deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom is a rushing stream. Here we see we have that conjunction but, meaning these two statements are likely contrasting statements. You have the fool versus the godly wise. The godly wise are represented by this refreshing, clean, clear, life-giving fountain of water, as compared to the man's mouth, which is described as deep water, stagnant, unclear, non-refreshing, non-life-giving. Deep water during these times was thought to be foreboding, hidden, full of mystery and danger. This term, deep water, we'll also see it will be used in chapter 20. Let's take a look. It's referred here as to the heart of man, which is where our motivations come from, which are often described as hidden and deceitful. The purposes, the motivation of a person's heart are deep waters, deep waters. But one who has insight, meaning discernment, draws them out. As stated here in Jeremiah, it takes God's wise discernment not to be fooled by a deceitful heart. God's insight helps us to recognize within the depths of that deep water those secret motives of the selfish heart. Next, verse 5. It is not good to be partial to the wicked, and so deprive the innocent of justice. This, like in the previous chapter, is a reference to the wisdom that God has applied to justice. The qualities of honesty and impartiality are critical components of having an effective judicial system. God's firm principle is that justice should be blind. Decisions of guilt or innocence should not be influenced by someone's wealth nor their power. Next, more consequences of foolish decisions. The lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to the very lives. We see another characteristic of the biblical fool. He or she has an unguarded tongue, which brings harm to both themselves and to others. There's a good reason why King David earnestly prayed in the book of Psalms, "Set a guard over my mouth, Lord. Please watch over the door of my lips. Do not let my heart be drawn to what is evil, so that I take part in wicked deeds." Our tongue is indeed the most powerful muscle in our body. It can cause great harm. It can also cause great good if it's influenced by God's wisdom. This theme of the foolish tongue will continue into the next verse 8. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the innermost parts. This exact proverb is going to be repeated again in chapter 26, verse 22. So this proverb is very important to God. They wanted us to get it. To gossip means that we speak negatively about someone behind their back, without their knowledge, without their approval. This Hebrew word for gossip means to betray a trust and to be a scandal monger, speaker. Gossip means detailing someone's faults or detailing someone's failings. Why is it that humans enjoy either giving or receiving gossip? To eat it up like a choice morsel of food. It's so, quote, tasty. God's wisdom tells us why. It's because of prideful selfishness, where we want to build ourselves up at the expense of someone else. So is there a difference between sharing information and harmful gossip? Yes. That difference is the motivation of our heart. Does that action and attitude come from a heart of love, godly love, or from a heart that is motivated by pride? And the question we always should ask, did we think before we spoke? Did we ask ourselves, are we sure this is indeed true? And then ask, what is our true motivation? What is our purpose for saying it? Are we trying to be helpful or hurtful? Are we motivated to be encouraging and inspiring, or to tear someone down? And lastly, are these words kind? And most importantly, are they really necessary? The next verse, verse 9, gives us another example of foolish behavior. One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. The meaning of slack here is describing someone that lacks caring. They lack commitment. They selfishly have no respect nor concern about the quality of their work, nor the impact that that has on others. This choice of attitude and action are foolish, God says. Why? Because it's self-destructive. That type of behavior and attitude can destroy a business, a relationship, even a society. Now we'll lastly close with the final two verses, 10 and 11. The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. It's interesting that throughout the book of Proverbs, this is the only place where this term or phrase is used, the name of the Lord. It is a beautiful reminder that we are so blessed to have the ability to put our trust in the name of the Lord. Communities and families that lived on the outskirts of the city at this time they lived in the countryside. If they came under attack, they would run to the strong, fortified, walled city for security, for protection. This is the same reminder for those that are walking with God. We too have a true place of security. We will, as is promised, we will be blessed if we put our faith and our trust in the mighty name of God. Unfortunately, the verse also states that the wealthy, they imagine that their wall is too high to scale, meaning they have this false assumption that their wealth can prevent troubles. But their wealth cannot buy health. It cannot buy happiness. It cannot buy fulfillment, character, love, and especially it cannot buy salvation. Only God can give us true joy, true purpose, true security, comfort, and peace. Well, that ends we'll finish up chapter 18 next week. Until then, may God bless you and your family with both grace and peace. Aloha.